Guerrilla Sports Off Court, a post-game live reaction with myself and Brandon Crystal. And this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome in, everybody. I am Liv Moods. That is the ever wonderful Brandon Crystal, aka BK. You can call him BK. It's usually a little easier that way. But we are going to be talking in our typical fashion, post-game live reaction form of the Nuggets on the road, taking on the very disgruntled Miami Heat. Amid all the Jimmy Butler drama, there's a lot of uncertainty there with that team. The Nuggets have officially won 10 straight games in the regular season against the Miami Heat, as well as a record, BK. You're the numbers guy. I'm not sure if you knew this. The Nuggets are officially 12-4 following a loss. So that bounce back mentality that sometimes, especially for me as a sports bettor, can come in handy when you're trying to find an edge and you're trying to handicap a bet. You look for teams that are really great after a bounce back, especially teams that get blown out, right? We just saw this Nuggets team on Wednesday, just a couple nights ago, get pretty brutally beaten by this very young and very talented Houston Rockets team. And then they go on the road and they get a very, very convincing win with the help of Jamal Murray, who had a 30-point game, Russell Westbrook doing his thing, Nikola Jokic, who I'm going to get into later. I have a pretty hot take about Nikola Jokic tonight. I'm not sure, BK, if you saw that no look over the head, behind the back
I did.
that was like ultimately an alley-oop. It ended up being what gave him a triple-double tonight. Aaron Gordon finished it off with a dunk. It was just a beautiful moment. And there's so many of those moments when you watch Nikola Jokic play basketball. But BK, overall, what are your feelings about this very convincing win by a Nuggets team that we just saw struggling quite a bit a few nights ago?
Well, and you talked about the dysfunction of the Heat. It's hard to really understand that unless you're there every day. And Jimmy Butler, I think, had a social media post announcing his big return after a 7-game suspension. But what I appreciate is that, especially in the third quarter, when Miami was trying to make a game of it, the Nuggets are able to extend the lead in the fourth. You get a 3 from Julian Strother, you get a 3 from MPJ to not only keep that margin into the teens, but then into the 20s and win by 20. I tweeted after the first quarter that Joker was on pace with 8 points, 7 boards, 5 assists to go to 32 points, 28 boards, 20 assists. If it would have played out like that over 4 quarters, just based on that quick math, projecting that. Nonetheless, his elbow seemed fine enough. And that 12-4 stat, I didn't know that. But we know how good they've been on back-to-backs. We know they've lost some run-ins and some back-to-backs. And so they're 8-1 on back-to-backs. We know how good they are when they win the first quarter. There's plenty of numbers on their side. They just need to continue to show you night in, night out. And I think that's sort of what Michael Malone talked to the other night about them being closer. Tonight's a good example. The Heat aren't what they were when they squared off in the championship round a couple of years ago. They were the 8 seed, it's worth noting. But Jimmy Butler clearly on his way out in some form or fashion. Tyler Hero's playing like an all-star. And you know what you have with the rest of their squad, especially with Bam Adebayo, Olympian and perennial all-star. But I think it's a good bounce-back win, knowing you're going to have a tough game Sunday. You get Joker back. You get AG off the bench. He had the dunk on that sweet bounce pass over Joker's head. You tweeted it. And AG, very efficient, gets you 16 points on just 5 of 8. He hits all 5 of his free throws. He grabs 6 boards, all on the defensive glass. And so I think you got to feel good about where they are at full strength against a solid team, not a great team, but against a solid team to go on the road. We know how hard road wins can be in any sport, but certainly in the NBA. And so I think you feel good about where things are now as they'll go to a tough game on Sunday. And we're not going to jump too far ahead until we need to, but has it been confirmed, or was that just, did I like a tweet that was just somebody throwing out there that Joel Embiid's already been ruled out for Tuesday, or is that Is that actually accurate?
Listen, it would not freaking surprise me. I haven't seen any like confirmation on that. I'm gonna really quickly go on my phone and look at that matchup on their schedule and see if there's any news there. I haven't seen anything in regards to that, but let me
Well, no,
just put it
Denver
this
Post.
way.
Denver Post, 76ers, Joel Embiid will miss 5th consecutive road game. That was from 9
There you
hours
go.
ago. Now,
Yep.
it's not that he's playing until then. He's hurt and will stay hurt. So he's not playing Sunday or Monday.
You know, the thing is, I'm not saying he's not injured.
He's
You know,
skipping
it's
the whole road
amazing.
trip. And
Yeah,
I'm sure
I'm not saying he's not injured. I'm sure he is, and I'm sure he's just listening to his body, doing what he needs to do. But I do find it very ironic that we never, ever get to see with our own two eyes in the Mile High City, Joel Embiid going against the guy that he ultimately stole the MVP award from. It belonged to Jokic. Everybody with eyes knows that. You know, the casual fan or the 76ers fan probably feels like Joel Embiid deserved it that year. But most of us who really study and watch the game know that that was just voter fatigue at its finest. And again, I'm not saying he's not hurt, but I do find it hilarious. I knew it. I think I made a joke with you on the show weeks ago before we even knew he was injured, stating that, oh yeah, we won't see him in Denver. There's no way. And sure enough, here we are. We will not get Joel Embiid. But I want to talk to you a little bit. You and I have spent some time talking about what this starting lineup could and should look like. We've seen Russell Westbrook starting more and more and more. Of course, Aaron Gordon, I think it's very smart to preserve his body as much as possible. He plays a very physical game. He's very aggressive, which is something the Denver Nuggets so desperately need. And it's very important that we have him at full strength when I'm not saying it doesn't matter now, but you'd much rather have an Aaron Gordon available and ready for the playoffs if that is the future for this Denver Nuggets team this season. And so I do respect and appreciate them trying to reserve his body or preserve his body a little bit. We're seeing some different versions of this starting lineup. And I will tell you, when Russell Westbrook is starting, which we have now seen such, I don't want to even call it development, because anyone that has really watched Russell Westbrook knows this is who he is, right? And I just think that he's like a plant, if you will. You can put a plant in dirt, but if the dirt and the soil does not have sunshine and water, it's not going to grow. There are certain environmental aspects that matter with these superstars that get passed around the league, where they really need to be on a team that, one, makes sense for them, and two, the team knows how to use them. I would say the Nuggets have figured that out. Right before, I believe it was right before the fourth quarter started, here were the stats. As a starter, he's averaging about 31 minutes off the bench. He's averaging 24.1. Points wise, 15.1 points on average as a starter, 11.4 coming off the bench. Rebounds, 6.7 as a starter, 3.7 off the bench, and assists, 7.6 as a starter, 5.6 off the bench. So the Nuggets have truly figured out how to use Russell Westbrook. We're seeing him play significantly better as a starter. Could you credit that to the fact that he just feels wanted? He just feels appreciated. You know, he doesn't have that pressure weighing on him. Could it also be the fact that Nikola Jokic notoriously makes everybody's life easier because of the way that he sees the game, the way that he's constantly 10 steps ahead, and the way that he facilitates the game as well? There's a lot of things I think we can credit to that, but we are seeing so much improvement in every statistical category for Russell Westbrook as a starter. Do you still feel the same way? I know we've talked about it many times, that keeping Russell Westbrook as a starter is the absolute right idea.
It's going to be hard to convince me otherwise. I guess I'm not
I agree.
going to lose sleep if Michael Malone feels like, oh, we need Russ on the bench to spark the bench, because the bench is constantly a work in progress. But I think that when you're asking, why are we seeing this level of production from him, there are obvious answers. You play with Nikola Jokic, you're just going to be better. Everyone that's on the court with him, your plus minus will be higher. And you look at their numbers tonight, Zeke Naji and Hunter Tyson probably weren't on there with Joker at all. They had negatives. Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther as well. And Julian Strawther, oh no, I'm sorry, he was +9. But Jalen Pickett, PJ Hall snuck in the game, who I believe was Hunter Tyson's roommate in college. But Joker's going to make everybody better. At the same time, there excuse me, is absolutely almost no pressure to be the Russ of old. And that was the problem. When he got to LA, they thought he would be basically a third piece with LeBron and Anthony Davis. And it didn't really make sense. Not that LeBron and Joker don't see the game the same way, but they do play it a little differently just because of their physical stature. And so that didn't work. And then you go to the Clippers, and that was constantly a work in progress. You add Kawhi, you got Paul George, you're trading for or acquiring James Harden. And so you still needed Russ to kind of be Russ. Here, you just need him to give you all the intangibles. When he gets you 4 more points, if he were playing with the starters and averaging the same minutes, let's call it still 30 minutes, but getting you 11 points and 5.6 rebounds and 3.7 assists, you'd still be fine with that. But by being out there with Joker and presumably better players, Michael Porter Jr. is a better shooter than the guys on the bench. Christian Brown is going to attack more consistently than the guys on the bench. Obviously, Joker's Joker. Jamal Murray is going to get to the spots on the court he's comfortable, as well as knock down more threes than those guys. And so it's kind of obvious, but it's also, I think, a huge relief for Russell Westbrook that he can just go out there and play with energy and take what comes at him and not have to, not that he won't attack, but not have to dominate the ball or feel like he has to facilitate everything.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of kumbaya happening here with the Denver Nuggets. I think Jamal Murray is realizing Russell Westbrook is there to make his life easier. I think Jokic already knew that Russell Westbrook was going to do that being on this team. And I think Russell Westbrook can acknowledge and admire how easy Jokic makes the game for everybody else. So seems like there's a lot of good chemistry that's cooking up here for this Denver Nuggets team. You just want to see them continue to build off of that and create good habits and make that their identity, right? I don't want to see flashes of really great things against disgruntled Miami Heat teams that don't know what they're doing with Jimmy Butler, or, the Brooklyn Nets or the LA Clippers. I want to see this against OKC. I want to see this against the Rockets. I want to see this with Jokic not on the floor. I get it. Jokic makes everybody's life so much easier, but find those opportunities to still get some really big wins against a lot of teams this month that are above 500. They don't have an easy schedule. And like Coach Malone has said multiple times, they do have I think you said in your post-game stand-up, like one of the most exhausting schedules in a way.
Yeah, it was the least amount of rest or something, essentially,
right.
with how soon they're playing other games, including
Correct.
today, 3 games in 4 different time zones over 4.
Yeah.
Sorry, 3 games in 3 time zones over 4 days. They were in Central Time Zone, then out to the Mountain West, and then a day off and in the East Coast tonight.
Yeah. And listen, no excuse, right? You got to find a way to get wins, but it does make a difference when you're traveling a little bit more. The opponents you have always seem to have a rest advantage against you. Those things do matter. I want to give, of course, flowers to Jamal Murray. I've been very tough on Jamal Murray. You know this, BK. The chat knows this. Anyone tuning in knows. I've been very hard on Jamal because I knew Jamal's potential and I knew what Jamal was capable of. And I also know, as a longtime Denver Nuggets fan, if you're listening to this and you are a forever Nuggets for lifer and you weren't hard on Jamal Murray, you're not a Nuggets fan. You should know, just like I do, that in order for this Nuggets team to win another championship, we need the version of Jamal Murray that we got tonight, that we got a couple nights ago, that we got when he dropped 45. That is the version of him that has to stick around in order for this Nuggets team to truly be a contender. When we don't get that version of Jamal, he is an X factor in so many ways. And I think he has the ability to either turn a game around in a positive direction or in a negative direction. What makes you good makes you bad. And that's just the unfortunate truth of life. I have things in life that I would like to think are my best traits. And some other people may say that's actually your worst. So it depends on who you ask. But I have held Jamal to a very high standard because I know how crucial he is to the success of this Nuggets team. And any Nuggets fan out there, if the end goal for you is not winning a championship, then what are we doing? That should be the goal. We have seen this Nuggets team at its best. In 2023, when they won their championship, they set the standard high for what Denver Nuggets ball is supposed to look like. And so anything less than that, and it does feel like a disappointment. And that's just me being a true Denver Nuggets fan because I want the best for this team. So I have to give Jamal Murray flowers. He has, it seems, flipped a switch. You're not going to get 45 every single night, but BK, you and I talked maybe months ago about the fact that, you'd like to see him at least above 20 every night, right?
Yeah, 19,
that's kind of
19 ain't going to cut it.
Right. And listen, that's not just because we know he can drop 45 and he can be the bubble Murray and he can be the blue arrow. That's not even the reason. That's one of the reasons, of course, but you also just expect a starting point guard that has won a championship and is on a max contract gives you that. That's your expectation. So the high expectations are a result of Jamal Murray's greatness that we've seen. It's not like we pulled that out of thin air and said, now that you've gotten paid, you need to show us something we've never seen before. No, we've seen it. We just need to get it back. And so I want to give flowers to him. I am tough on him, but at the end of the day, he is so stinking important to this team. And when he is on, there's nobody like him. And speaking of nobody like him, BK, I have a bit of a hot take here. I am willing to say with my chest, and I'm going to explain it a little bit, and then I'll let you kind of fight back with me because you have watched the Michael Jordan era, you have watched the LeBron James era, and you are watching the Nikola Jokic era. I think the GOAT conversation is a very difficult one to have for many, many reasons. I am willing to call Nikola Jokic a GOAT in his own respective way, and I'm going to tell you why. He, in my opinion, is the most brilliant-minded basketball player we have ever seen, ever. Now, the GOAT conversation is tough, right? Because then you've got people that are like, well, how many finals has he appeared in? How many championships has he won? Are we really going to, let's say Russell Westbrook, over and done. Let's say he's never wins a ring, right? Let's say he never wins a ring. Are we really going to view him as anything less than an elite basketball player in the NBA
but
all time? I mean, come on.
I don't want to diminish your thought, other than Charles Barkley didn't win a championship. Patrick Ewing didn't win a championship. John Stockton, the all-time leader in assists, didn't win a championship. And we could go down the list. Reggie Miller, who was the all-time three-point leader for a long time, till Ray Allen and Steph passed him, and now James Harden too, I guess. We get that list is long. Carmelo Anthony is a Hall of Fame player. Kevin Durant would have been a Hall of Fame player had he not won those 2 rings in Golden State, if he doesn't win again. But it's hard to quantify without that hardware. And so I was listening to the Kelsey Brothers podcast this week. They had LeBron on, and as they run down his resume, 20-time All-Star is insane.
Of course.
4-time MVP, 4-time NBA Finals MVP, I believe, and the NBA's all-time scoring leader. Now he's had to play 21 years to get there, just like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did as well. But it's hard when you know that players like Michael Jordan, but certainly even LeBron and Magic Johnson have existed, to say that Joker sees the game better than them. If you want to say that it's as good and you want to put them on the all cerebral team with Magic, and I think it's fair to put MJ on it, even if he wasn't the most prolific passer, just because of how he could attack defenses and how he was able to involve teammates later in his career to go win those 6 rings. But Magic, LeBron, Larry Bird as well.
Of course. And listen, I'm not discrediting winning a championship. That is a very difficult thing to do. And to the players that have won multiple, to the LeBron Jameses and the Michael Jordans, I'm giving all of my credit. But
your argument, basically, I don't want to cut you off, but we're going to switch sports. It's basically like saying Dan Marino is the best quarterback of all time, or saw the field better than Peyton Manning, who only has 2 rings, or Tom Brady, or Patrick Mahomes, who has 3 and counting. Because you're like, Dan Marino saw the field.
But hold on. The NBA is so flipping different, because you have players constantly with their eyes out, not focused on where they're at, hopping to teams just to get a ring. There is value in the fact that Nikola Jokic has kept his head down, stayed focused, and been patient with the Denver Nuggets long enough to take them to a championship. He didn't have his eyes elsewhere. I mean, I get very sick of how often you have players that are hopping from team to team just to chase a ring. We've seen the Phoenix Suns attempt to do it. We see a lot of teams try this experiment, and it doesn't always work. I find way more value in the fact that Nikola Jokic was able to band together with a group of guys for 6 years and then finally figure it out. I respect that 10 times more.
And so then you put Dirk Nowitzki in that category. He was a Dallas Mav for life, and they won that one title in 2011, I believe. And that's great. And Dirk's a top 5 kind of scorer, versus Karl Malone, who chased a ring and didn't get it in LA, or Gary Payton, who went to LA, didn't get it, got one in Miami, coming off the bench with Dwayne Wade and Shaq. But the claim you made was that he was the GOAT because of how he sees the game. And it's going to just be hard to quantify when those other guys
No. I think you can absolutely enter him. I think by the time it's all said and done for Nikola Jokic, and let's say he gets a few more rings so that everybody can
That'll
shut up,
change it considerably, though.
you can absolutely start looking at him from a GOAT lens. And here's why it is so different. And this is not me knocking the physical nature of Nikola Jokic. LeBron James and Michael Jordan, I think most people just with an eye test and just watching them play, they are so phenomenal at what they did and what they're currently doing, LeBron James and Michael Jordan, because of they're just the fact that they are physical, athletic freaks of nature. You could argue, and there's a lot of people that have, that Nikola Jokic athletically is not what you would picture as for a 3-time MVP. There's been a lot of conversations about that. I'm not the first person to talk about this. What makes Nikola Jokic something that we've never seen before is because he's not your picture perfect athlete. He doesn't look like LeBron James or like Michael Jordan, but his mind, the genius mind that he has, I will absolutely say he sees the game better than the two GOATs that are constantly in the GOAT conversation. I'm not saying that makes Nikola Jokic a GOAT, but the level of intelligence that he has, his ability to see the court, his ability to be 10 steps ahead, it is unlike something we have ever seen before.
And there is data to back up some of this. And it's thanks to John Hollinger, who was a sports writer / math whiz for a long time for ESPN, then was the GM of the Grizzlies because he invented the PER stat, and then now is back working in media after he got fired. But PER, it sums up players' positive accomplishments, subtracts their negative accomplishments. So if you score 30, but you have 10 turnovers, that's going to kind of cancel it out, and returns a per minute rating of player performance. And so John's database goes back to 88, 89. And then Basketball Reference has actually expanded it all the way back to the early 70s. But looking at these numbers based on that, Joker is the most efficient player in the history of the NBA. And then right after him, believe it or not, is somebody we will not see on Tuesday. It's a bunch of people we won't see on Tuesday, but Joel Embiid second. And then Michael Jordan is third. So as great as Jordan was, and you want to talk about all the other stuff, based on those metrics and those first 6 or 7 years of his career, where he almost never passed, it was mostly about him scoring and trying to carry his team on his back. And obviously he had Pippen with him, but then you add the other pieces along the way. On the second half, you had Dennis Rodman for those second 3 championships. Then it's LeBron, and then it's Anthony Davis. And they're all close to each other. Joker's is 29.2, Embiid's 28.4, MJ 27.91, LeBron 26.96, and Anthony Davis is super close to LeBron, 26.84. So when you look at all of it together, and if you were to throw in, I think you have to get to at least 3 rings, so 2 more rings, because Larry Bird, and I understand he and Magic came along at a different time, but Larry Bird got 3 rings. Kobe got 5. Tim Duncan got 5. Joker in this modern era, if he gets to 3, especially if Giannis doesn't get another one, if KD doesn't get another one, if LeBron stays at 4, if Steph stays at 4, and Joker gets to at least 3, then that changes things. But Kareem has 6, 1 in Milwaukee, 5 in LA. Lajuan only has 2. So
I get it. And I understand that there is value in winning a championship. I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but what I do oftentimes get frustrated by is how much the rings matter when giving credit where it's due in terms of having MVP conversations or having GOAT conversations, because there's a lot of things that have to go right that are out of stars' control in order to win a championship.
And that's
coaching, health. I mean, there's things that are out of control.
Well, and that's the thing too. And I'll let you jump back in. I do appreciate a bunch of folks in our chat throughout 2 more rings, which is the same thing I said. Poli said that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. Tim Duncan has 5. Kilpie says that Joker sees the court like Magic. He is a better shooter. He's certainly more efficient and was a better outside shooter. The game was different. Odds are if Magic came up today, he would just shoot better. He would shoot certainly as well as LeBron shoots, and LeBron's an above average shooter and a great shooter. And that Magic is maybe a little better anticipating, and maybe so. In a more wide open era, although now, and this is the frustrating thing too, guys are so much more athletic. And if you go back and flip on 80s basketball, yeah, Lakers and Showtime were fun, but when they got into the playoffs, it got bogged down, and you had the bad boy Pistons and the Celtics, and they slowed it down. So you couldn't get out and run as much as you wanted to. But the half court defense, it was all compact. Now it's spaced out more.
Right. And the game's changing right now with the 3-point shooting.
100%. But so I think when you look at the fact that he's never had another all-star as a teammate or an all-NBA player as a teammate yet, if Jamal gets there, if MPJ gets there, if anybody else, even if they get named this year, for us gets named to the all-star team, then that would count. But every other one of those guys that we could list not only has all-stars, but Hall of Famers in their prime. Like, obviously, Russ is going to get to the Hall of Fame, but he can't call him in his prime as good as he is 17 years in. You know, we can go through LeBron's list of teammates with one of those championships, but it starts with D-Wade and Bosh and Anthony Davis, and I guess we'll see if Kevin Love gets there. But Kyrie's a Hall of Fame kind of talent, certainly a perennial all-star. And so, and we, you know, Michael Jordan had Pippen forever, and then he had Rodman as well. And we could just keep going. Every one of those guys, Duncan had Parker and Ginobili. See, they all had all-stars / Hall of Famers in their primes. And so that's what really separates Joker. Olajuwon's close because Kenny Smith, Sam Cassell might have made an all-star team. Robert Horry made big shots, wasn't an all-star, but he did have Clyde Drexler for did he have him for both? Maybe he definitely had him for the second one. I think he might have him for the second one. And so that still, if he had Clyde for at least one of them, that's more than, you know, anybody else. Isaiah Thomas had Joe Dumars and Rodman. So they had perennial all-star Hall of Famers, and Joker just hasn't had that unless something changes with one of these guys here pretty quickly.
Well, and that's, again, you're kind of a little bit helping make my point, which is all I'm trying to say is I don't think that rings should be the only thing that you look at when you're talking about a GOAT. I'm not saying Jokic is there yet in GOAT status. Do I believe with my chest that he is the most brilliant mind in basketball that we've ever seen? Yes, I do believe that. And I think I'm going to be continued to be proven right on that. My point is, Jokic having one ring should not immediately shut down conversations about his GOAT status, if that is where he's heading, because you just said he hasn't had all-stars around him. He doesn't really play with Hall of Fame players, and the GOATs that we spend hours and hours going back and forth about have played around Hall of Fame players and all-stars. So there's so many things about Jokic that you could break down, the metrics of the overall efficiency of a team, his personal stats. I think I just saw next is Larry Bird, but Jokic is the quickest player to reach what, 5,000?
15K points, 15K points, 7,500 rebounds, 5,000 assists, and he did it in 90 less games. It took Larry, I think, 799 and Joker 709.
So I'm just saying that we shouldn't immediately shut down GOAT conversations with players outside of Jordan and LeBron because of rings that have been won, because we are where I think it's different than the NFL is we do see a lot more of the diva mentality. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm throwing a tantrum. Send me somewhere else where I have a better shot at winning a ring. They're always chasing the ring, which they should. That should be the end goal in an NBA season. Hell, that's the end goal as a fan watching this Nuggets team. That's what I want to see. But that just because Jokic has one ring compared to Jordan's and LeBron's hardware collection, to me, it doesn't eliminate him from the GOAT conversation, because what we're seeing with him is, yes, Michael Jordan and LeBron James have the advantage in terms of their athleticism, their physique, everything about their athleticism. That is, in my opinion, what makes them so special. What makes Nikola Jokic special, which is different from many of the Hall of Famers and the All-Stars and the GOATs that we talk about, is the genius mind that he has. I am willing to die on the hill that he is the most brilliant-minded player we have ever seen. And that's how I feel. And if people think I'm wrong, that's fine. I get it. He's going to need some more hardware in his collection to be in the GOAT conversation for a lot of people. But when we really break down metrics and all the things and who he's played alongside of, and who the other GOATs got to have around them, when you really break stuff down, you could make a case for Nikola Jokic very quickly entering GOAT conversations. And I truly believe that.
I'm going to be fascinated. So I pulled up some of these career numbers. That's also almost impossible to quantify, but it's still a fun conversation to have, especially with real basketball, lifelong historian, basketball fans. But so Joker, obviously he adds a little more to it tonight, but 7,500, 15,000 points, 7,500 rebounds, 5,000 assists. So your all-time assist leader is John Stockton at 15K. Chris Paul's probably not going to catch him. He's at 12-2, and the odds that he plays 3 more years and gets 1,000 assists each year seems low. And 1,000 is on the high side anyway. I mean, I guess that's what 10 a game over. Is that number right? 800 is 10 a game. So, or 820 is 10 a game. And so Chris Paul's going to finish second. J Kidd's third. LeBron, by the way, is fourth all time in assists, and he is 800 behind Jason Kidd. So LeBron's going to have to play through this year and into next year and still pass at a high clip to finish third. Odds are he doesn't catch Chris Paul, but it's not out of the realm possibility. It's less than 1,000 behind him too. So Joker, though, to get in the top 25 where Muggsy Bogues is 67.26. Mike Conley is the next highest active player at 64.56. So in recent years, too, Joker has averaged obviously more, but he had 584 the year he won his first MVP. Then he had 780, 1019, 817 last year, 976. This year, he's at 448 and counting. So let's just round around to 900. And I know we're right at 40 games, give or take. Maybe he goes over that. Maybe it's a little under. He'll get to 8,000 assists, barring him just walking away. And that's going to put him in the top, close to the top 10. Right now, Isaiah Thomas is at 9,000. If he gets there, then he's top 10 in assists. We know the points will come, and he'll end up in the top kind of 20 in scoring and rebounding. I didn't realize this. Wilt Chamberlain is number 1 all time. And Wilt Chamberlain, they used to accuse him of literally bouncing the ball because they didn't keep track of field goal percentage officially, that he would just bounce the ball off the backboard to get more rebounds. 23,924 rebounds. Bill Russell, his contemporary, 21,620. And then Kareem, who obviously came around just a little bit after them, is third at 17.4. Then Elvin Hayes, then Moses Malone. The first modern player is Tim Duncan, sitting right at 15,000. But Joker's had so many big rebounding games, he could end up in the top 10 if he play. He'd have to play 15 years. Well, I guess at this point he's gonna have to play 6 or 7 more. So we'll get close to 15.
Yeah.
And maybe he catches like Dwight Howard's 10th all time at 14,000. It's just gonna be fascinating to see where his totals are to
Agreed.
go with all the other stuff that is harder to quantify, because totals you can quantify. Efficiency, though, thanks to John Hollinger, you can quantify that as well.
I mean, and also, can I just put out there that there is, how do you describe this to Aaron Gordon, no look to a dunk in a stat line? You can't. Jokic passes every eye test. And that is what's so hard, is we get so obsessed with stats and numbers in the NBA to determine how good a player is. Jokic can't be described in a stat line. You can't. There is no way. If I'm telling my future children about Nikola Jokic and I just pull up his numbers, it's like, oh yeah, cool, mom. He sounds like he's awesome. You got to watch this to understand what's going on here. And it is just, it's honestly undescribable in so many ways, but it truly is why I'm willing to start using the all-time conversations with Jokic just simply based off of watching him play. The stat lines don't do justice to what Nikola Jokic is able to do on any given basketball court against any given opponent. It just does not do him justice at all.
I understand
But they matter. They do matter. The stats matter, of course.
Oh, and the rings ultimately matter in terms of where you're going to be viewed. He didn't have to get the 6 to catch Kareem or 11 to catch Bill Russell. But if he gets to 3, then he passes Olajuwon. He's Shaq had 3 in LA, those 3 in a row with Kobe. I give Shaq credit, because Shaq, for all of his bluster from time to time and trying to copy guys like Kareem and Bill Walton that were hard on him early in his career because they wanted him to be great, so he is now doing that to other guys. He's never really been like that to Joker in general, the way he busts on Embiid or even got on Jamal the other night and has more than once. But that Shaq, on that podcast a couple of months ago, had no problem saying Joker's ahead of him in the top 5, which is not easy for Shaq to do, because that's kind of the complaint from Chuck and Kenny all the time, is that Shaq's analysis sometimes doesn't always match up, because he's like, just be bigger, like Joel Embiid, just go be bigger the way I was. But that's not how the game is played anymore.
Right. It's
and
different.
an appreciation for Joker's greatness. So it's easy to call him the best passing big man of all time. It's easy to call him the most efficient player of all time because those numbers are there. Trying to figure out the basketball IQ, smartest, all that, you're going to have to talk to every, basketball guru that's covered the game forever, that's gone inside the numbers, and or, the players, guys like Charles and Shaq and Kenny and Vince Carter and Tim Duncan and people like that, to say, okay, you've played against so many of these guys. Like, you need guys that cross generations. Where does Joker stack up? And it's still going to be hard for them to pick any of them because Magic is so revered. LeBron, for as much as Michael Jordan will rip your heart out, and you'd probably still draft him ahead of LeBron. LeBron's my favorite basketball player to watch because at that size to now have scored the most points, fourth all time in assists. I'm sure I didn't even look at the rebound list, but I'm sure he's not too far down on. He's 28th in rebounds at over 11,000. So it's hard to truly quantify who saw the game the best. But it's a fun conversation, and there's only a few people that are in it. Michael Malone would be a good person to ask only because he worked with LeBron, he worked with Steph Curry, and obviously he's with Joker. I get that he's probably partial, but if you could hold him up to a lie detector
maybe I'll make you ask that question at the next post-game presser.
I think I'm gonna get it there. I think you'd honestly have to put a bunch of these guys on whatever the most legitimate FBI, CIA lie detector test is and ask them.
There you go. Now that's good. Well, listen, and honestly, I do have to also throw this out there. I really do hate having the GOAT conversation between MJ and LeBron because they played in two different eras. And to me, it's kind of hard to compare the two, right? Like there's just so many things you love about LeBron. There's so many things that people love and respect about MJ. It's hard when you start playing the comparison game. I'm just saying that I don't think rings should deter people from having a conversation about how truly all-time great.
Well, let's do it this way, and we can do this over and over, and plenty of people in the chat can jump in. High Wisdom is ranking his as, I don't know if this is best players or just the way people see the game. He has Jordan 1, Kobe 2, Magic 3, but this is always the easiest way to do it. Because if we did it in football, for as much as people like Tom Brady, there's plenty of people that would take Dan Marino or would take Peyton Manning because of how he played the game, would take John Elway, and certainly these days would take Patrick Mahomes. So if you're starting a team and knowing where they are at the height of their powers, okay, we're not worried about longevity. We're just talking about in their prime, you're going to have them as the centerpiece of your team. Who are you taking? And Joker's going to go higher than people think, but I don't know if he's going above MJ, Kobe, or LeBron. In fact,
I mean, that feels like
he's not. And you look at what he's doing now with less support. You'd say, well, he's already won a championship with less than any of those guys had. Because even when Kobe won that second crew, he had, or the second two with that crew, he had Lamar Odom was close. Ron Artest was the best defensive player on the wing. And he had Pau Gasol, who's a Hall of Famer. So, but if you're starting,
it's an impossible question. Again, you have to remember, like, this is coming from a Nuggets fan. So take it with a grain of salt, everybody. I'm just, if Jokic could show some improvement defensively, I think it elevates where people would grab him. Absolutely. One of the things that I think I would keep in mind if I'm building a perfect team is how difficult Jokic is to guard because he's unpredictable and he plays a very unique style. So when I'm looking at, can this guy go against anybody in the league and still cook? With Nikola Jokic, the answer is abso-flipping-lutely.
Well, and
he's a unicorn.
If you want to jump eras, Michael Jordan would be in this era and he would be just fine. He would shoot more threes, but you watch Anthony Edwards, who's a little smaller than him. You think about Kobe at the start of this era. Anybody else that you want to even throw in there, the way John Morant is attacking people. Michael had all of that, but he would just be shooting more threes and making more threes, but still lock you down. And that game would translate. But conversely, Joker's game would translate because he doesn't live above the rim. He's fine being on the block and going and score. The game has changed, so he would probably, as a three-point shooter now, obviously have an advantage. But let's just take him back to the 80s and 90s. He would just make 15-footers off the glass. And while he may not have the true skyhook like Kareem had, he would have all of this up and under shit that Kevin McHale had and all of that craftiness plus a vision that no other big men, not counting Magic at 6'9" and Larry Bird at 6'9", had. They just didn't. Arvydas Sabonis when he got here, but he was 30 years old when he came to America. So
I asked you, BK, because you've watched. I'm not calling you old here on live broadcast, but you've watched
older
a
than
lot
you.
of. You,
Well, what's your
you've
dad say?
watched
Because your dad's
multiple
not that much older
eras.
than me. How old's your dad? Your dad's a couple years older than me, right? I'm 46.
Yeah, he's
I'll
like
be
52,
47.
I think.
Right. So your dad's 5 years older than me. So we've been watching essentially the same basketball. He got to watch a little more Magic and Bird and early MJ as I was, in first, second grade when I was in first grade when MJ got to the league.
I will tell you, my dad will pick MJ over LeBron.
Okay. But next time you talk to your dad, which I'm sure will be either later tonight or tomorrow, ask him, and he's a little biased, watching the entire Joker era. But if you're gonna do this all the time, anybody in the chat, let's take LeBron and MJ out of it. Okay. Anybody in the chat that wants to throw this, we're not gonna be on here too much longer.
Yeah, we'll do this and then we'll get out of here.
How high are you taking Joker all time? And I'll just throw names again. Let's just take MJ and LeBron out of the conversation.
Okay.
Are you taking Joker over Kobe? Because Kobe wanted to kill you. And so I'm not saying I am or I'm not. I'm just saying that's where it starts. You got to throw Tim Duncan in there because he won 5 rings. I guess we can go back and play the Bill Russell game, but I think Wilt Chamberlain to me feels like the person you would be more excited to have than Bill Russell. Shaq, who may have taken Olajuwon. We could, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas. I'm just trying to think of guys in your top 10, top 15. Dirk. You can throw any names at me. You might take Joker ahead of a lot of those guys, knowing what he means. I don't know if you're taking him. I'm taking him ahead of Tim Duncan, but I'm probably a bigger Tim Duncan hater, not for what he accomplishes, because I hated that they kept calling him power forward when he was clearly a center. That bothers me more than any. And look, I'm from Dallas. I've got a Dirk Nowitzki action figure, sure, somewhere around here, and loved watching him play. But I'm not taking Joker. I might take Kareem over him. And I think Kareem gets left out of these lists way too long. I'm probably taking him. He and Olajuwon is probably where it starts for me. It's like that's the coin flip. But he's more efficient, passes better. Olajuwon is, I think, the all-time steals leader, second or something. I could look that up too. And obviously a great scorer, a really underrated passer, and a great shot blocker.
Can we also just put out there that it is wildly impressive that we are even able to entertain these conversations with Jokic when he may just be scratching the surface of his career. We don't know.
Olajuwon's 10th, by the way, in steals. Sorry. Your pal Russell Westbrook's 17th all time, and he is going to catch Kobe by the end of the year. He needs 30 more. He might catch the old Dallas Maverick, Derek Harper, and then AI is 14th. But Russell Westbrook, assuming he just plays into next year, will be in the top 15 of steals.
I love it. But again, it's very cool to be even able to entertain these conversations about Nikola Jokic when we may just be scratching the surface on what he's going to accomplish in his career and the numbers that he's going to put up. The fact that you can even entertain him and Tim Duncan in the same sentence and he's not even done. He's not done. He's not finished. We don't know how many more years he's going to play in this league, but if
we're going to go through things that have never been broken or won't be broken, it's going to be hard to get to the 15,000 assists. So I feel safe about that. But I'm looking at blocks. I don't think I realized Tim Duncan's 5th in blocks at 3,000. Mark Eaton, who is super tall, and Nuggets fans remember, I'm sure, him blocking plenty of Alex English and other Nuggets shots because he played for the Jazz back in the 80s. Mark Eaton was like 7'4". Kareem's 3rd at 31.89. Dikembe, 32.89. Olajuwon blocked 30, 3,830 shots. The number one active player who easily has 5 years left, maybe 7 or 8. Anthony Davis has 1,782 blocks. So he is half of what Olajuwon did in a clearly Hall of Fame career. And he's had a really good year last year. He's having a really great year this year. But to give you an idea of how many shots Olajuwon blocked.
Fleeting, though?
Well, also, everything was at the rim. And everything was
the
in
game
the
is changing as well. Yeah.
And everything was at 15 feet where if he helps out, now because the floor is so spread out.
Right.
If totally. Anthony Davis gets to 2,000, it might as well feel like 3,000.
Yeah, I agree.
Jokic over Duncan versus Duncan over Jokic. These are fun conversations. We're not going to settle it tonight.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is the beautiful thing about an opinion is it could be wrong in some people's eyes. It could be right. This is just how I feel. And again, I have always been very transparent and honest. Whenever BK and I have talked about who's your GOAT, MJ or LeBron? I have always been very honest and said I never got to watch MJ with my own two eyes. So it just doesn't feel fair to even try to give an answer on that. I can listen to things my dad tells me. I can listen to things BK tells me. I can talk to people who watched both eras. I'm literally a 98 baby. I did not get to be old enough to appreciate and understand MJ's game like that. So,
But
you
could not just highlights, but the beauty of
I've
YouTube.
watched plenty and I like what I see.
The beauty of YouTube is you can go watch
It's
like
true.
NBA final series.
And I've watched plenty and the man
You're
was,
reminded, and the Last Dance is, and I get MJ had some fingerprints on that, but people's issue with the Last Dance have nothing to do with what MJ did on the court. It was like the Scottie Pippen stuff, the flu game that may or may not have been food poisoning, whatever it was, all of that. It's all the, was he a good teammate? He broke Steve Kerr's jaw or whatever the fuck it was, right? But you're reminded how dominant MJ was, and similar to Joker and any of your other truly great players, every night they brought it. And I don't think Joker does it because he's in the back of his mind thinking, oh, this might be the only time that a kid sees me. But MJ was conscious of that. And I think LeBron is too, to some degree, although he's in year 21 or 22 or whatever it is, but that he was able to bring it every single night, because when he was in Dallas the one time a year, that might be the only time that kid in Dallas ever sees him, or in Denver or LA or whatever it may be. And so there was a level of competition that we all know about, that if you're really bored, and we already know you've got too many movies and old TV shows to catch up on, that you're not going to go watch a bunch of MJ. But,
all of it.
But ask your dad realistically how, I didn't mean to kick my camera there, how high he's drafting Joker, and ask people that aren't Nuggets fans.
No, I will. I need to. That's the other thing too. Like, of course, there's going to be some natural bias there.
Hey, put it on Twitter tonight and let's see where it goes.
All right. I will. I can do that. I like it.
And even qualify it. Say, hey, we're going to take MJ and LeBron out of this just for the sake of this conversation. How high are you drafting Joker in his prime to start your team with any player ever in their prime?
Love it. Okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to tweet it as soon as this is over. So for those of you that are tuning in, make sure you head over to my Twitter at Liv Moods and give me your answer there. And BK, this has been another post-game live reaction between you and I. And thankfully, it was kind of all smiles, and we got to have we got to entertain a hypothetical conversation because the Nuggets got a convincing win, and that's always a really good feeling to have. So make sure you guys are tuning into All Things Guerrilla Sports on YouTube and All Things Socials for all of our Denver Nuggets coverage this season. It's a long season, but we will have you covered on all of it. So make sure you're following BK, following myself, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage, who BK, they will help you save some money. If you're willing to check them out, you can either go to trustedamerican.com or you can check out that QR code right above BK's head. Give that a scan. They're there to help you either lower your interest rate, get you a better interest rate, lower your monthly payments, basically just help you save some money. So take advantage of it. Thank you guys so much for being here. BK, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it's fun to see them bounce back. Like you said, they're now 12-4. It's a good stat that you shared, coming off a loss. The Celtics kicked the crap out of the Magic tonight. I think it was 121-98. It wasn't close. Sorry, 121-94. So you're gonna have
So we'll see if the Magic are a good bounce back team.
Yeah, and coming off a couple tough losses. And we talked to our guy, other BK. He said that he predicted that they'd be potentially coming off these two losses, knowing that they were in Boston. Now they'll fly back. Much easier trip for the Nuggets. I assume the Nuggets are going to get a night in South Beach and then head up to Orlando tomorrow. They weren't racing, just knowing the way they're operating these days with maximizing sleep. They're not going to practice much tomorrow anyway. They're just going to do recovery and maybe some film stuff. So they're going to get a night in South Beach tonight. I'm sure if you scour social media closely enough, you might find a Nuggets player or two that hits up a club there somewhere along that strip off Collins or wherever it may be. But hopefully they just kind of keep stacking more wins than losses and everyone's healthy. But I think it'll be fun on Sunday. And we know there's obviously a lot of NFL football around it, but it'd be good to see them get that win and then come back for some more games at home without seeing JoJo Embiid, my fellow Jayhawk, although I have a degree and he was only there for a year.
Not the flex or anything. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
He's done fine. You go to college, you get a job. Joel Embiid's done fine after 1 year of college.
That's fair. Exactly. Yeah. I'm not knocking on him at all, for sure. But This has been another Gorilla Sports Off Court Post Game Live Reaction Edition. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Liv Moods. That is Brandon Crystal, aka BK. We'll have you covered on all things Denver Nuggets all season long. So tune in to all things Gorilla Sports. Give us a follow, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and we will catch you very soon for the next Denver Nuggets post game show and or an episode of Off Court.